Hey everyone, this is Tony Holbein. You are listening to the Revenue Formula with Mikkel and Tony. In today's episode, we talk about inbound and outbound and why you probably want to merge the two. Enjoy.
Appropriate jokes always.
Yeah.
Appropriate jokes
Best
always.
Boss Awards. There you go.
Well, right back at you. So yesterday, I was out hunting last night.
What leads?
No. No,
That's right. You don't do that.
No,
That's
it's
right.
they're not in season. They're not in season. But duck and geese, they're in season. So I was out hunting, and the thing is, we got like a heat wave. But you still need to, wear long pants and a
protective
jacket.
gear and stuff.
Yeah, you need to wear all that stuff and protection for your ears, right? If you end up shooting, it's
Did you
pretty
shoot
loud.
anything, by the way?
So I was getting to it.
Yeah.
I only got one shot. I took it, and it was a layup. It couldn't have been easier, and I missed. I just completely missed. But the thing is,
But the good thing when you're alone in the forest, no one is there to tell the story.
well, I was there with some others, so but they didn't see. So I just told them it was a really difficult shot. I just decided to take it, But the thing is, like with this season, standing nearby water in a forest, it's mosquitoes. And obviously I had the mosquito spray on me, but I just forgot one spot, my hands, which is basically one of the only things that were exposed. So yeah, that was really fun to stand 2 hours just getting drained by mosquitoes.
And sweat, I guess.
And
right?
sweat, yeah, it was okay.
You
Once
know
the
what?
sun
This
kind of-
hunting thing sounds like a really cool thing.
It's such a great hobby. Such a great hobby. No, it's fun. I don't know. I think it's also, I was reflecting, like, whenever I go out hunting, either there's just a lot, right? You have a lot to shoot and you hit a lot of things, or there's just nothing. Nothing happens. You just stand there, wait, and then you also get a bit lazy. You like sit down and not really prepared. So if the opportunity
scrolling
arrives,
LinkedIn.
yeah, exactly. And if the opportunity arrives, you're not even ready. You don't have your game face on, right? So anyway, I mean
that's funny.
So it's
think
just
that's really
difficult.
funny.
It's difficult.
So this is really what hunting is about.
Yeah.
Is scrolling LinkedIn in nature.
exactly.
That's pretty much what it
That's
is.
what it is.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
With
hit
a bunch
something?
of rules.
Yeah, with a tell me about it. So, and I mean, there's so many techniques. I think what we kind of missed out on, we should have had the dogs out from the beginning.
Oh yeah, it was.
And and what we're going to talk a bit about today is kind of blending things and about your tactics specifically.
You know what? It
you
took
got
me
the
half a
segue?
second. It
You're
took
like,
me half a second.
there it is.
I was about to smash it down, and then I was like, "Oh wait a minute! No! This is a segue. It's a
coming.
segue.
It's coming. No, so the thing is, there's a lot being discussed around, hey, should you run this motion or that motion based on your ACV and blah, blah, blah. And what's so funny is quite often for a lot of companies, if they're doing outbound, if they can sustain that motion, chances are they're also doing inbound. And what ensues is a lot of infighting, right? So I literally had with someone on our team, it's like, should we do some rules of engagement on who gets credit? And I was like, let me sharpen my knives. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
And I think we want to talk a bit about that conundrum today, because maybe it's time to mesh that even more.
Or maybe it's not.
Or maybe it's not.
So I think what would be helpful for folks to understand is, so when you were operating a different scale, what was your month-end process? You as a marketing leader together with the SDR leader?
Well, with the SDR leader was literally, hey, this meeting that was booked outbound, yeah, that's actually inbound. And then discussion. So we would review hundreds of opportunities and kind of manually move things to inbound or outbound. Mm-hmm. Honestly, that's what we would do, right? The other thing I would also do is like, hey, why on earth are we distributing these opportunities to that AE? Mm-hmm. He or she can't close these type of inbounds. Like, what are we even doing here? It's like, oh, well, Greg just really needed some pipeline and we're good friends. So, that was kind of the process. And I think it's just, it often gets a bit weird. It's this kind of, you have a very distant relationship somehow of just passing over this stuff and then following up. But there's not really that kind of collaboration happening, right? Between the teams.
And there's a lot of chatter out there on LinkedIn, at least, talking about inbound led. Outbound is, I think, the newest abomination Then we have like Allbound.
Oh, Nearbound.
And a
No,
couple
that's a
of-
company. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a couple of people are really kind of for Allbound and stuff. I totally get it. And maybe I don't actually fully get Allbound.
No.
Maybe I don't.
Maybe we do by the end of this episode.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll call it something else.
So
One
write us
bound.
write us at podcast@growblocks.com. Tell us if we actually got it.
Yeah. And the problem is pretty obvious. You do a bunch of activities trying to attract demand. You do a lot of these things, right? It's not just outbound and inbound. You have like many different things you do in outbound. Then you have inbound. What does that split into? Kind of, yes, there's some, maybe paid stuff. There's some, organic stuff. Maybe you have events. Maybe you have sponsorships. That, there's so many pieces here. And the obvious problem is that, well, how do I know which part of my activities is actually driving the most revenue?
Yeah.
Right. And there's this famous saying of someone saying like, I know for sure that only half of my marketing activities are driving all of the revenue. I just don't know which one.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have companies that are trying to do revenue attribution for marketers and then sales folks to figure out, well, which activity was it that drove it and so forth. And I think they're fantastic and they're helping. It's like no question there. But also they are also limited only to digital touches.
Yeah.
Right?
It's also often, it becomes a very binary thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, either it's inbound or it's outbound. Then you sit and look, well, we could nurture the heck out of all the opportunities we have in progress.
And if you were to call the CMO, Stefan from Dream Data, he would say, well,
Yeah.
you can do U-shape, you can do W-shape,
Yeah,
you can DK, you can progressive, and whatever. It's like all of those things, yes, they kind of are there, but also they just simply, they're still not telling you where did this actually come from, right? So the typical thing is, we see this on our inbound form is, podcast, thanks.
Yeah.
By the way, podcast shows up. That's how someone heard about us. Well, and I don't want to be too technical, but basic on the, some of those attribution software, they would kind of mark them as organic, search or something like that. Let's not go too far into this. The other piece then to this is, not only do you want to understand which activities are driving the most bang for the buck, so to speak, but you also have to pay commissions to people.
Yeah.
Right? And this is, I think, where most people kind of get it wrong, where they conflate those two things. Ideally, they should be the same, but for the sake of sanity of that person that you pay the commission to, have to pay commission to, you should, in some cases, be leaning commission-wise in that direction, but overall attribution-wise, you can be a little bit different about it. So one example, and this is rules of engagement. So we literally had a 3 or 4 page document which read like a legal text.
Paragraph 2.1.
Yeah, no, really, yeah. And then with instructions how to work through this and so forth. And a large portion of that was who gets credit for like a deal. Not the closed one, but the created opportunity, right? And you can go simple and say like, well, if the last touch of the SDR was 30 days or 90 days or 60 days, it doesn't matter if it comes inbound, it's an outbound. But we all kind of know it probably was an inbound in reality, but to keep everyone sane, let's just have that rule and kind of make it so, right? Because there's a case to be had that someone in this organization, because of this one unopened email that was sent, suddenly had a big conversation in a meeting room around why someone should buy Growblocks, and then someone else is reaching out, which probably didn't happen like this, but it might have, right? And this then, sometimes leads to, well, all these SDRs getting all this credit, so we should have more SDRs or whatever is getting credit, and kind of that's happening. So this is kind of I think the number one problem people face all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually a little bit wrong to think about it like this. But that's kind of what I think the main issue is people run into all the time.
I also just really believe if that's how you're operating, it's binary between inbound, outbound, and there's no true collaboration beyond the whatever bi-weekly and monthly cadence between sales and marketing.
Yeah.
You're going to have some problems because, number one, is there any incentive to do anything for AEs? Really? Is there? Is there really any incentive to spend time on case studies, new decks, paid advertising,
customer
marketing, stuff like that, right? So that's one. The other is, if you strategically want to do something, whether it's enter a new market or what have you, marketing is going to look at that and say, well, it's totally unproven market. Are we going to hire a local speaker now and spend money there? And it's going to be totally inefficient. Our CAC payback is going to suffer. And, so I think one of the big issues with having it separate to a degree is making those decisions gets way harder. And I think when it really clicked for me was we spoke with Harrison Rose, and they'd been heavily outbound driven, and they had a target account list they were going after. And he was like, well, it's time to build up inbound. They brought the team in and said, well, who's the ICP? Who do you want? And it's like, this list. Here you go. That's actually who we want. And when the first inbound from that list came, it was like, well, thanks, but we already had them in our CRM. So the combined effort is actually the kicker all of a sudden, right? And I think that's kind of what we want to get a little bit into.
Yes.
How do we mesh these things together?
And while many people think about this as an attribution problem, it actually is more of a collaboration problem.
Yeah.
And you need the attribution thing to be solved to argue for which parts of the funnel should get more funding, for who gets commissions and so forth. All of that stuff needs to be done. But to be honest, it's a little bit of almost like a finance perspective to this.
Yeah.
It's not I understand how the go-to-market works, and therefore we're doing stuff. It's who needs to get paid and who gets credit.
Yeah.
And I think if you're looking at the whole problem like that, throw that away.
Yeah.
Like that also needs to happen, but that's for the admin people. That's not the real issue. The real issue is actually how can you maximize all of your demand gen effort?
Yeah,
That's how you need to think about this, right? And as a thought experiment, I want everyone, just for a second to think about what if, and in some cases that's the case, what if the SDR team reports to the VP of marketing? What were to happen?
Yeah.
Right? And I've never done the full thing, but what I have done is I had the inbound SDR team that previously was reporting to the outbound leader. I had that SDR team fall under the marketing leader's budget and remit. And basically, with that, magically, what was suddenly resolved was we're sending you all of those leads and you're not really working those.
Yeah.
And hey, here, 500 webinar leads, you need to work through them, otherwise it's not going to work out, you're not doing your job. That suddenly all went out the window, right? So that whole complaining about leads not being picked up fast enough, well, dear marketing leader, you lead those folks, figure out with those folks how you're going to make it happen, and you're going to realize there are some issues here that make this really difficult.
Yeah.
It can be done, but it's pretty difficult. And then number two, people are actually looking at the webinar leads and then their conversion, and then realizing, you know what? Actually, now this is my budget and I can't just complain about it. It actually doesn't work.
No.
It actually doesn't work that kind of they're calling those event leads and trying to, I actually can use their time on the phone better doing other stuff than this stuff, right?
Yeah. Or I was going to say, hey, someone out there listening now, they're going to have a marketing team that's cranking out ebooks or webinars. They're able to generate a lot of, let's say, right fit contacts, but not to convert them. Mm-hmm. What happens if you actually work with those SDRs on, well, how can we make it work? So one conversation we had internally was, well, it's pretty common to get a lot of information on the gated stuff you do, right? What's your title? What's your blah? A lot of that, honestly, you can get through enrichment tools today, or guess what? Look them up on LinkedIn. That's all very easy to do. But what you can get is information such as, what is your biggest challenge? Or are you working on blank, which is kind of relevant to what you're selling? You can get a lot of qualitative insights that you can then use to your advantage. And I think that was just a point when I also, as I reflected over this episode we were talking about now, is like, well, it just opens up the door to a different way of thinking, which is very much needed, actually.
And this is a thing where we're kind of starting to like, okay, the way Harrison Rose was actually thinking about this and the team around him at Paddle was actually really in a way that fully owned both of those arms of demand generation.
Yeah.
And the way he was talking about it was such a no-nonsense way, and everyone listening to this is like, well, wait a minute, why aren't we doing like this? This makes no sense. And the realization actually is that you have different channels that can reach, let's just say, one account list.
Yeah.
Let's just say you're not in the super B2C or super small SMB space. Let's just say you are, a good, high up SMB, mid-market enterprise, and let's just say you are able to create a list.
Yeah.
And maybe that list is, for some of you, is 1,000, maybe 2,000 accounts. For some others, maybe it's 10,000, 100,000 accounts.
Yeah.
But let's say you are able to create that list. Really, what you then, as a top of the funnel demand gen leader, need to figure out is like, okay, with the least amount of work, how can we get the most of those accounts to close with us?
Yeah.
That needs to be the thinking, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of realize, okay, maybe there's some prioritization that needs to be done. Maybe there's some, what is it that they're interested? What are the the lead magnets? All of these things you might be thinking about. And then it's like, how can I deliver this message to them?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How can I do that? And then the first thing would be, I know they're going to Google and looking for this, so let's buy some ad space there. Okay, check, done, easy. Next thing might be, I think they're hanging out on TikTok a lot. Let's try and find a way how could I even target them on TikTok or on LinkedIn or whatever you have. And then the list might go on. And then in that list, someone picking up the phone or sending tailored emails is just one of those other channels, right? And then the realization needs to be, okay, out of those, let's say 10,000 accounts.
Yeah.
Out of those 10,000 accounts, I can split this into A, B, C, D accounts. And I really want to start working with the A accounts because I know this is probably the lowest hanging fruit. And then you also realize, okay, wait a minute, maybe it's now only 2,000 accounts.
Yeah.
And I know there might be 3 or 4 people per account that, we might be relevant for. And I know that for someone to take action, for us to pop up on the radar, we need to hit them 4 to 7 times.
Yeah.
Or 5 to 7 times. And those 7 touches, this can be display ads, can be Google, can be a phone call, can be an email.
Yeah.
Can be a webinar that they attend, can be like 1,000 things.
Yeah.
And that's how you should be thinking about attacking that target. And now comes the fucked up conundrum. If now someone comes back and says, I want to buy, what did it?
Yeah.
What was it?
But I think that's also where we've kind of been taught to find one true answer when the reality is there's plenty of answers. Because if you just ask that one person, it's like, well, on the form, that person said it was the podcast, but on the last touch, we can see it was this, but they've been with us. So, it's kind of a rabbit hole you run down. And I think that's where, you just gotta accept it and maybe a little bit more pragmatic about this stuff.
I think the thing which is totally fair is, and that's why I don't like this all-bound thing. I think this all-bound thing sounds great from a individual contributor and maybe even a VP perspective.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we fight less. We're way more aligned, and maybe we're actually doing better work because we're aligned.
Yeah.
And positive for me, less accountability.
Yeah.
Less accountability. But when you then think one level up, and maybe CFO, CRO, CEO, they actually want accountability.
Yeah.
And that accountability is driving the team apart, creating misalignment and so forth, right? That's why people get those, shitty targets that they then optimize for and so forth. But what I don't like about the all-bound thing is this, and yes, there are ways to kind of try and create this, but it's the lack of accountability that comes with it. And then also, if you don't have a mechanism in place that does fight a little bit about, well, what do we think, where did this thing come from? You are losing the ability to have that be triple, quadruple checked by people that have like a financial interest in that number being correct. And then you end up with like, well, since we're doing all bound, let's just keep investing in all the things.
Yeah.
And that's not good. This is not what you want. This is great for some people on the team, but it's actually not great for the company.
But you also have to realize SaaS is its own little bubble. There are plenty of industries where they have even less information as to whether the budget is actually works out in the end, right? So I think, we might be over-engineering some stuff here. One other thing it's going to address, let's continue playing with this, Outbound moves together with marketing. We can call that department whatever. It doesn't really matter, but they're in the same team now. 2 other problems they can kind of help with is let's change the MCL definition.
Yes.
Lead scoring, right? I think, so personally, I think lead scoring is about to have run its course, if it hasn't already, for a lot of folks at least, right? And changing the MQL definition real quick, when you just say, don't do it. Like just pick one and maybe stick with it, right? And then learn from that. I think on lead scoring, what will change is all of a sudden, if you have the SDRs who need to work those leads under your wing, so to say, you're going to hear all the issues.
Yeah.
And then it gets very real. Again, you're wasting resources that accomplishes nothing at the end of the day, right? And so it can kind of change things all of a sudden. If you have a target list you're working on, why not just say who is hottest on that list? And then the SDRs can determine what they want to work on. Forget what the score is or whatever, but they might have, you know what, I really love that company. I myself am very personally motivated to try and book that meeting. So I'm going to give it a go, right? And I think that's also what we've heard from Jesus Requena at some point at Hex, basically having tried lead scoring and then just defaulting to, you know what, we'll just give them the list and then they can pick.
I'm not sure if you said it on the podcast and us chatting.
Maybe that
with
was
him, actually.
proprietary.
But yeah, no, that's totally a thing, right? And I think this is a good direction, but I'm just not sure if this is the solution to the problem.
No, there has to be structures. I get it.
So I don't know what it is. And the thing is, I think if you have the right setup, have it, and I wouldn't even recommend, so, I'm a CRO and stuff, I have been and still in spirit am, but I'm not even sure it's the right thing to expect most CROs, which are sales CROs, to expect them to get this whole thing, by the way. So yes, you could make the argument, well, if marketing and outbound, by the way, I think outbound and marketing, depending on this, how much revenue they bring, both should roll directly to the CRO. Not, outbound shouldn't through the VP of sales to the CRO. Just saying, if they're there, you could say like, well, the CRO is there to balance these things out and mitigate and so forth. I'm not sure if he or she is actually capable of doing that, and has the frame of mind and be thinking, oh yeah, no, let me invest some time here because this is in 3 months that's going to be important. They will be sucked into most of the sales stuff, right? So I think people should seriously consider more often than not running with what I see way more frequently in the US, to have SDRs part of the marketing team or have a common leader, like a demand gen VP or something like this, owning most of the marketing stuff, if not all, and kind of the inbound stuff as well.
And you know what? I think that can also solve for a couple of other things, which is not a lot of marketing talent is going to enjoy being under a CRO. Just putting it out there.
Yes.
There's going to be lots of issues with that.
Unless it's me, of course.
Wow. But there's going to be a lot of challenges with that. Don't want to get into it. But if you were instead to kind of break apart marketing and have one team that rolls to the CEO and then a demand function, all of a sudden you have a setup where there's one person responsible for creating the demand, and then there's another person responsible for closing it, which is the AE level, right? And I think that just makes it a whole lot clearer what are the different people's priorities and problems that they need to focus on.
Yeah, and I think some people you probably don't have too many marketing folks listening, but some people just lost their shit. It's like, wait a minute, there's the one side of marketing should report there and the other side of marketing should. So guess what? We tried this and it kind of can work out, but yes, I think it comes with another can of worms, like brand versus demand and how to balance that kind of. There are all kinds of other kind of things coming from this. But ultimately, what I would advocate for, instead of this all-bound thing, honestly, is to have inbound and outbound, let's just say those are your main channels, unified under the same leader. Yeah. And that leader may or may not be the CRO for, a couple of reasons, right? And then once you have that under, a roof, I think the collaboration will obviously increase, the way of working together will increase, et cetera, but you can still have some accountability in this setup, right?
I think the problem, if you roll those up to the CRO and they are not on the same team, you will have the same issue, right, with collaboration.
You could say that, yeah.
So I would think long and hard about whether there's a case to either create a team solely focused on demand creation, or roll it into marketing. If you have, so by the way, and this is going to be really important, you need a marketing leader who can actually handle that, right? It is a different game.
Absolutely.
And you need to have a mind for it, or he or she needs to have someone on the team who can take that part of the function, right? Yes. Because you have to realize the SDR function is like very specific what needs to happen. Marketing, you have a lot of disciplines that and they need to be nailed, right?
Yes.
So I think that's going to be the tricky part. But I do believe if you really want to solve some of these issues with, hey, we're just, marketing hits target, everyone else fails. Are we actually attracting the right ICPs? Do we provide enough, cover for the sales teams, etc.? I think it kind of makes sense to put some pressure on the marketing team by giving them that accountability.
Yes. And equally so, right? I'm not sure if I would, as let's just say I'm a marketing leader, I'm actually not sure if I would accept the revenue target as my commission payout. Honestly, it's cool and stuff, and I get it, and let's do it for the company and all of that jazz. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're kind of dependent on someone else not fucking up. Like
Sure.
you honestly are. So I think in this kind of setup, I think it would be totally fair to, yes, sure, everyone is working towards revenue and you should have a lag in that. But the other thing is also in this setup, you can just own the pipeline number or own the, meetings accepted number.
But you will also have some leading indicators. For us, it was meetings held.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes.
And I think you are going to have some of those because if let's say, hey, everything looks awesome. We're booking thousands of meetings now because Outbound is sitting under marketing. But then all the AEs are just rejecting it because it's like, wrong person, wrong company, wrong whatever, then it's not going to work out, right? So I think there will be some kind of leading indicators, and I think you will need to look at that stuff very closely as part of this exercise.
No, absolutely. Ultimately, I think what we're coming back to, there are all of those inbound, outbound, attribution, and there's even more channels, but we have like 6 community-led, nearbound, whatever. I mean, there's like all kinds of stuff out there, but ultimately the way you need to actually, as a company, think about it. And honestly, that's probably how your CEO thinks about it.
Yeah.
If your CEO is commercially switched on, that's how he or she probably thinks about it, is, well, we have this set of customers or potential customers.
Yeah.
What is the cheapest, best way to convert them?
Yeah.
And then there's an arsenal of tools we can buy in order to achieve that. And those tools, it would be pretty silly if one part of the tool set is attacking one account list and the other one is taking a different one.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. By the way, that in itself, if that happens, you actually don't have like sales or marketing misalignment. No, you have a complete, we don't know who our ICP is probably.
Yeah.
Because whatever you put on your website and talk about and marketing is marketing to, your sales reps had figured out that ain't working. These guys will never book with us. It's going to be those guys that book with us.
Yeah.
And those guys close.
Yeah.
So you have another issue altogether, right? But basically kind of realizing that all of these things that you're using to attract customer, they're different tools for the same purpose.
Yeah.
And they should all be trained on the same target.
Yeah.
And if you do that, I think the chances for success go up quite a lot. And the way to achieve that, my belief is not to kind of let go of all accountability and say, kumbaya, everything is great. I think the way to do it is to have maybe one dedicated leader, collecting all of those different top funnel tools together and creating cohesion within that bubble.
I think it's also just one last kind of reflection rumbling around in my head is like, well, if you don't have them together and there's a challenge in outbound, and you ask marketing to help, they're like, we need to do this other thing. Or, we can let's do a PDF deck.
Yeah.
We'll give you a PDF deck, right? Yeah. But if the VP marketing, CMO, whatever, has the responsibility, you know what? That person's going to say, well, that ebook, we need to push it 2 months. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take these 5 people, sit down with the SDRs. We're going to work something out. We're good with cameras. We're good with decks. We're good with case studies. We're good with blog posts. Whatever is needed, we'll help with that outreach to find a new path forward together with the SDRs. And I think that's just, for me, that's one of the points where I think you can lie to yourself and say, well, of course the VP marketing will help if outbound has a problem. I don't think it's that simple.
No, it's
I
not.
just don't. So I guess it's time for rebound, nearbound, trickbound.
Inbound-led, outbound, community, growth-led, sales-led.
And by the way, what I love if eventually someone merges inbound and outbound under one team, you know what? Marketing is going to be paid a little bit more attention to internally. They're going to get maybe a few more requests served a little bit more
I
airtime.
don't know about that. I don't think there's anything saving marketing. I'm sorry. If you concur with that comment, make sure you like, subscribe, share, send it to your marketing folks, and maybe send us an email at podcast@growblocks.com to tell us, hey, are you already doing it like this?
Yeah.
Because I think like 30-40% of teams might. And now that you're doing like this, do you still have the same issues?
And actually, would you be interested in hopping on the show and talking about it?
Ooh, what a great idea you just came up with, Mikkel.
Exactly. Now we're going to get so many inbounds.
That's it. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.